Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm really excited to have my guest, Amy, here. Hi, Amy. Amy, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Anna. It's great to be here. I was super excited for today. Not only just to be here on the podcast, but to meet you in person.
Thank you. Yes, me too.
Zoom.
I know, I agree. You see someone's name, you see someone's little picture, and you wonder if they actually do look or sound like the person you think they do. So it's really nice to put the name, the face, the voice in person. So thanks again for being here.
Absolutely.
So Amy, let's start off with sharing a little bit about your backstory. Like, where are you coming from? Where in the world are you coming from? And a little bit about, where you started.
Well, I am a cheesehead through and through. So I'm from Wisconsin.
Yep.
The dairy state. And yes, I love cheese. But anyway, no, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I've never lived outside of Wisconsin. I don't know if I ever will. I love it. And I have pretty much my whole life been in very, very small towns in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And that would be, I graduated with a high school class of 60, I think it was.
Wow.
And then, I met my husband in high school. And we raised our children in a small town. Like we just, literally small town, Wisconsin. That's us. So
I can appreciate that. I mean, I'm from Southern California, but I have friends because I play hockey. I have friends who are from Wisconsin, and I've been to Wisconsin many times for hockey tournaments, actually. Yeah. So I can appreciate it, and I love it there. Not necessarily in the winter. I have been there in the winter. It's a challenge for us Southern California girls.
I suppose when you're from California, I think that was a challenge.
Yeah. So I can appreciate you being there your whole life. So your husband and you were high school sweethearts?
We were. I was 15. He was 16 when we started dating. We just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
That's awesome. Okay. So when you graduated from high school, did you know that you wanted to go down this medical path, or did you just kind of stumble upon it? Tell me a little bit about how you decided to go down the healthcare route.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a funny story. Some people might not, but I think it is. But graduating from a small town, I wanted to get out of the small town and experience the biggest college that I could that was still in Wisconsin. And I knew I wanted to do some sort of healthcare at the time. Honestly, I was very headstrong on going to physician assistant school. There really isn't any medical background in my family. It was just, I think, going through life when you come upon different, somebody in your family or some friends or whatever that have medical problems, it either speaks to you or it doesn't, and I was one that it was like, I need to do this because it was so intriguing to me. And so I applied to one school and one school only because in my mind, I was like, I'm going to UW-Madison or I'm not going at all. And so I did. I applied and I got in, luckily. And then obviously tried, taking all the prereqs for PA school and going to be honest, my freshman year in college, going from a small town to a large town, it was like I majored in anything but going to class.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it kind of sabotaged my, my ability to, at that point to go to PA school. So I needed a backup when I didn't get in. And at the time, that was when we had advisors. I don't even know if they have advisors
Yeah.
anymore,
Yeah.
honestly, in college.
Yeah.
It's so different. But, I went to my advisor and I said, these are all the classes I have. What can I do? And they said, well, these are your options. And of all the options, I thought, well, nursing is very similar. So I
Mhm.
tried nursing school with the primary intent to then like every year reapply to PA school
Right.
until I got in.
Mhm.
And then I just loved nursing. I really did. And I never applied to PA school then. And it was like my life just sent me on this path that it was supposed to be and yeah, led me down that road.
Wow. Wow. So once you were in nursing school, then were your eyes open to any particular route? I mean, obviously you fell in love with it. You had originally thought about PA school. Oh, let's actually go back. When you were talking about going to PA school, was there a specialty that you had thought of, or just PA school sounds interesting?
No, actually, I wanted to do surgical.
Mm.
I wanted to work in the OR, which really I look back on now and I don't know other than the fact that I had torn both my ACLs in sports in high school and I had surgery. Um, Other than that, that is the only reason why I thought, well, orthopedic surgery would be cool.
Right.
There really wasn't anything else. So in my mind, I was thinking surgery. And then when I got into nursing, it was ER, critical care, and wanted nothing to do with the OR, which is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I when I was in nursing school, I took an EMT class, just an EMT basic class, and then on night shift I was a dispatcher for a small fire EMS department, and so that's where I would like study at night and then go on calls and whatnot through nursing school.
Mhm.
Um, so at then that kind of set me on the route for emergency and
Mhm.
critical care and stuff like that. Um, and I've never I was in the OR once and I hated it.
Well,
It
it's not
so
for
isn't it
everyone.
funny how like different things that we go through
Yeah.
in life, it takes us down the right road. And I
Yeah,
tell my
right.
kids all the time that, don't try to make things happen and force them. Like you can go after something, but don't force it
Right.
because life will lead you where you're supposed to be and you'll just get there. And
Yeah.
yeah. So
No
that's kind of,
wonder, yeah. No wonder we have a connection. I love that. I totally uh I spend my days going that route, is just, where is this going to lead me?
yeah,
And then, jump 2 feet in, but don't force it. I
yeah,
love that. And I love the fact that
yeah,
you share that with your kids. Okay, so you worked while you went through nursing school. That sounds familiar. I did the same thing, working at night and then going to school during the day.
mhm,
Nowadays, it's very uncommon for
yeah.
people to work and go to nursing school. So, okay, so then did you go down that emergency route once you finished school?
Yeah, I did. But what's funny,
Mhm.
nowadays nurses when they graduate, they get like sign-on bonuses, right? And you can make all this money as a travel nurse, and you don't really have to have a lot of experience. But I don't know how it was, Anna, when you graduated nursing school, but when I graduated, like nobody wanted to look at you if you were a new grad and you didn't have any, nursing experience. And um, so it was like pulling teeth to try to get somebody to like convince them to hire you
Right,
as a new nurse.
right.
So my two options were I couldn't do ER because I wasn't experienced.
Mhm.
So it was either work in a nursing home or work in an internal medicine clinic.
Mhm.
So at the time I was like, I don't want to do nursing home. So I went to a clinic and it was a good experience for me at the time, although I only worked there for 5 months with
Mm.
the intention then I'm going to apply for the nurse ER or the first ER job that opens.
Right.
And I did in a small community hospital.
Mm.
And surprisingly, like within 5 months of working in a clinic where you don't really use your nursing skills,
Right.
um, I was experienced and yay, they would hire me. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So
I
good.
came from that same time. I was one of the few that was lucky because I was already in the operating room as a surgical tech. So at that time, I knew I would have a job getting out of nursing school in the same OR I was working in. But all of my fellow students went through that same route. There were no new grad programs. Nowadays, that's the only way to get a job is to go through these new grad programs where
Yeah.
make a commitment and all of those things. They didn't exist when I was going to school either. So I remember those days and I was just I wasn't planning on going to nursing school, truthfully. I became a tech because I couldn't use my bachelor's degree. So I worked as a tech and I was like, well, shoot, I have all these prereqs. I might as well go to nursing school because I think I literally needed one prerequisite and I was like, well, I might as well go to nursing school and get paid more than what I'm doing now. Um, knowing that I had a job. If I had gone a different route, then the struggle to be that, you need experience to have experience to it was not appealing. I lucked out. And later on in management, I remember hiring nurses and it was that same, you felt bad because they didn't have experience, but you know, they,
Mhm.
it's like, but I remember when you needed experience, you didn't have experience, someone needs a job,
Yeah.
you went through the process, you need a job. So I did have a little empathy for those that had no experience. And
Yeah, it was
now it's a
frustrating.
different,
It's like
yeah,
you won't hire us because we don't have experience, but how are we supposed to get experience if you don't
exactly,
hire us? So,
exactly.
um, and honestly, shortly after that was when there was a huge nursing shortage, and then just a couple years later, nurses were getting sign-on bonuses. Um, so
Yeah,
I think it's just this
yeah. Oh
normal
yeah.
up and down of
Oh
nursing
yeah.
and healthcare, and that's just where
Hmm.
I happen to be. But yeah,
Hmm.
so I went to a small rural ER and I loved it. And I worked nights. And at once I was trained, I was the only nurse there on the night shift. And so I look back on it now. I think, holy cow! Talk about being thrown into the wolves. Because
Mm-hmm.
like, I was a nurse for 6 months, but I really wasn't experienced.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it was a great experience. It was really, really awesome. That was my goal, was to be an ER nurse. And then we saw so many pediatric patients in the ER, a small rural ER, that I started to absolutely love pediatrics, which is funny because that was like my least favorite class in nursing school was
Right.
pediatrics. So
Right.
then I transferred after the like 2.5 years. I transferred to a larger hospital, to the PICU, to the Peds ICU.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for, I think, between 8 and 9 years. Loved every bit of it.
Mm.
But then, again, like we were talking about before, it's funny how things kind of change and your road changes. And the good thing about nursing is that you can do any of those things. You
Yeah.
just have to be open minded to all of it. And it's so awesome because had I not followed where things were bringing me, I wouldn't be here where I
Yeah.
am. But
Yeah.
so like after I think it was, I want to say 6 years in the PICU,
Mm-hmm.
I got this idea of being a flight nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I needed some adult ICU, or, more adult than what I had in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
So then I transferred to a even larger hospital, teaching institution, university hospital, to the trauma ICU, adult trauma ICU. And I worked there and in the PICU because I didn't want to give up the PICU.
Right.
And then within 2 years from there, I landed a job here in my town where I'm at now, on a new base that was opening for a flight program. And so then we moved.
Oh,
So
wow.
then I was a flight nurse for 6 years. Um, and I don't know, I just, things just start going. And I thought, I can't do flight nursing the rest of my life because it's hard
Mm,
on your body.
mm,
But I loved it. And then that's kind of what started me thinking, I think I need to do something more. That's
mhm,
what nurses
mhm.
do, right? We're always
Yeah,
like, we want more, we want more.
yeah,
And then I
yeah.
went back to school for my master's for my nurse practitioner
Mhm.
while I was working on flight. So that was interesting, going to school and working
Right.
full time. And then after I graduated, I transitioned back into the clinic part of things, more into the
Oh,
primary care. So it was like
right.
I just did this big
Yep,
circle. It's really interesting when I look at it. Of course, I
yep.
didn't realize it was happening at the time,
Mhm.
but yeah, now I do primary care as a family practice nurse practitioner. So
It's so crazy. I can everything you're saying in your story, I can totally relate on a different level. I've never been a flight nurse. I've never worked in ICU, but I ended up full circle as well. I was in the OR for many years and then went into management, kind of thrown in as a new nurse, went into management. And then I ended up transferring out. I wanted a lateral move, a lateral management move, salary based. And I ended up in the clinical IT department. I didn't have any, IT experience, but I had management experience. And the IT director at this hospital decided to hire me because they could teach the IT part, but they couldn't teach the management part. So I spent time in as the only RN in the IT department for like 5 years. And it was great, and then it became very boring, and ended up spending time at home with my kids, and then full circle, I ended up back in the OR many years later. So it's just funny but it was always like one thing led to another, and I would have never predicted that I would be sitting in the basement of of a hospital with a bunch of IT guys, and speaking the language.
what great
And then
experience though.
oh, it was amazing. I got paid to learn. Nowadays, there are these, college degrees
Yeah.
for clinical IT. So I'm very blessed that I was trained on the job to do it, and I did a lot of project management. I flew all over California, implementing systems. So I
That's
got
awesome. That's great.
great experience in the electronic medical record. Obviously, and this was right when physician order entry was mandated, and it was like we
Oh,
saw training
I
these
remember those
doctors,
days.
and a lot of them ended up retiring. It's kind of like COVID, it was like the big phase before COVID was physician order entry, and these doctors were like, I'm not doing this, I'm retiring, sorry. Or you had to sit with them and hold their hand to get them to just understand why this was important and all of that. So that was a very interesting time, great experience. And then, I've ended up back in my home in the OR. But then again, it was like, okay, what's next? Let me see. I think I'll do my first assisting. Oh, let me see. And then ending up where we're at today. So
Yeah,
I can totally relate to your story. And I know you said that us nurses think that way, but I don't
yeah,
think everyone does. I mean, I'm sure that you are, or have been surrounded by nurses that have been doing the same thing for a very long time because they're afraid to change. There
absolutely.
are, I think, the minority of nurses are willing to just be like, okay, what's next? What's next? I wish more nurses were like that. And over the many years of being around nurses, I would always try and like, come on,
Yeah.
don't be
I
afraid.
I don't
Don't
know
be
what you think about
afraid.
this, but I think that, and of course there's no data backing this up. It's just, through experience that I found nurses who flock towards the hustle and bustle of critical care, ER, OR is busy, like,
Mm-hmm.
all these things that are constantly changing
Hmm.
are the ones that are I don't want to say get bored easily, but are always looking for that one more thing to learn or that one more thing to do, or, oh, I could do that as well.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting. I do see that. I see that in a different way where I know that there are a lot of, especially in the OR, there are a lot of people that um, rather than try new things, they do more of the same thing. It's like they're taking call at this place and taking call at this place and taking call because it is that I can do more. I can do more. So I've never really thought of it that way. But when you said that, that's the first thing. Those are the people I thought of. They don't necessarily, they're not interested in changing, but they're interested in doing more or they're bored.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I hate to call it the word bored, right?
No,
Because
no,
I don't think
but
in nursing we ever really get bored, but you're just
no.
constantly like looking for more
Yeah.
or adding on or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's I agree with you in that. And it does seem to be even those that I've met over time, also the ER, the critical care, and I do see people actually changing from the OR going into the ER or the ER going into ICU or they're all kind of very similar and it is that hustle and bustle and just the constant activity.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're crazy, I guess.
I know. I think we are. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
In a good
Well,
way, right?
yeah, in a good way. Absolutely, in a good way, of course. Well, thank you for sharing that your
Absolutely.
past because it is one of my favorite things about this podcast is really getting to know how similar we all are, but also how different routes people have taken or the reasons why they end up in nursing. There's not, I said how I ended up, but I've also got a picture downstairs that my mom found when I was like 8 years old and wrote, I wanted to be a nurse when I grew up. I go, Mom, I don't remember ever saying that. Sure enough, there it is, proof. So, I would say there wasn't a reason why I went into nursing. There wasn't a big calling. It was just like,
Yeah.
I'm here. But there are people on this podcast that had that calling
Mhm.
a family member, things like that. So it's really interesting to hear people's backgrounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
what's funny,
Yeah.
I just remembered this too,
Yeah.
is I remember graduating from nursing school and a few of my friends were like, we're gonna go back for a nurse practitioner right away. And I remember saying, oh my God, who would ever want to be a nurse practitioner?
Yeah.
Because what I graduated nursing school in 97
Hmm.
and NPs weren't as prevalent as they are now.
Right.
And um, so obviously at the time I was like, I would never want to be a nurse practitioner. I would never want to work in a clinic. I would never
Right.
want to do all that stuff. And now look at me. I love it. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I went
Yeah.
back for my NP.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic as well, just NP in general. What I've found, and I don't know if this is your experience with what you've seen, but I have found that a lot of young nurses that who just finished nursing school
Hmm.
and 1-2 years into it they're like, yeah, I'm getting my NP really quickly. W- I, you know I mean, I'm old school, so it's to me it doesn't I'm just like old nurse ratchet. It doesn't make any sense why you don't have the experience to
Yeah.
go down that road. But I love your energy. I love that you want to do things, more things. But what is your thought, or do you see the same thing? Do you see a lot of young nurses brand new out of school going down the NP route?
I do. So we potentially could be opening up a can of worms here, and I'm just going to warn you right there. But
Okay, no, yeah.
but anyway,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will just say, and that could be a whole other podcast for you, right? Talking
Right.
about
Oh, yeah,
the
totally.
concept of going, you know, further for your NP right out of nursing school and why not and why you should and blah
Right,
blah blah.
right. Oh, yeah, totally did.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I and for listeners, this is my personal opinion.
Yep.
This is not backed by anything. This is my opinion,
Yeah.
and my opinion is based on um, students that NP students that I've had throughout the years. I've had many, many,
Mhm.
many.
Mhm.
Since I was a nurse practitioner, I waited. Let's see, I think it was 2 years as a nurse practitioner before I agreed to take on a nurse practitioner student because I was still learning, and I'm still learning today. But
Yep.
there was no reason for me to try to teach a nurse practitioner student how to be a nurse practitioner accurately when I was still so fresh in it. That just wasn't fair to them or me. So, nonetheless, since I've taken nurse practitioner students, I've noticed that the ones who have less nursing background are the ones that struggle the most in switching their brain from the nursing brain to the clinician slash provider brain.
Mm.
And it is just really, really difficult for them. And I've found myself having to not pick up from the nursing brain, but actually review some of the nursing assessments that they need to do that will then get them to the advanced assessment, right?
Yeah.
And so it has been so profound that I've started to vet my nurse practitioner students before I agree to take them on. And I always ask, how much background do you have? Where is your background from? Why do you want to be a nurse practitioner? What is your goal? Like there's a lot of things that I ask to vet them so that I'm not having to essentially retrain them how to do all these things. And because we don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And that's not, you're an advanced degree education. You can't be reverting back to your undergraduate education. So yeah, I don't think that new grads, or even I would even push to say nurses who have been in nursing less than 3 years should be nurse practitioners. Now, here's another thing is, as a flight nurse, when I was applying for flight nursing, I don't know how it is now. It might be the same, but current flight nurses might be able to tell you that better. But there was a minimum amount of years that they had to work either in ER, ICU, critical care, before they would even be looked at and considered to be a flight nurse. Which, when you look at the nursing scope, it is the highest scope of nursing you can do in flight nursing. So if that's the case, then why are we accepting nurses with 2 years, 1 year, even 3 years experience in master's or even doctoral degree programs to practice in an advanced license?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a very interesting conversation, and I have these conversations about there are some new nurses even in the OR that go down that NP route very quickly, and it always it always baffles my mind on the reasons why. I don't understand the reasons why they want to go so quickly, because kind of along the same lines, even when you're becoming certified in the operating room, you need to be working for at least 3 years. And it's really kind of that 3-year mark as well. It's like once you're working for a good 3 years, then you're deemed, competent enough to take on, to be independent and all of those things. And okay, like we said earlier, you're always learning. I actually did have a flight nurse on my podcast recently, and we did talk about this, and she did mention
I'll have to look at that.
her name is Nurse Gwenny. It was my last podcast I did
I'll listen to it
last week. Yeah. And so she talked a lot about what was needed in order to be accepted into the flight position that she had. And she had a very extensive background. She does a lot of teaching now. She's a great personality too. And I had never flight nursing. So it's interesting that you have done flight nursing, because flight nursing to me has always been this mystery, I think, to a lot of people, because it's such a small niche, I mean, ICU and peds, it's such a big niche, but flight nursing is so small and such a mystery to all of us that now I've talked to 2 flight nurses and it's really fun. So yeah, check it out. But yeah, you're right. You need that experience in order to make those decisions, and you are making these advanced decisions. So thank you. I know we kind of went off a little bit on a tangent, but this is a conversation that comes up all the time, and it's always something I'm curious about. So if I'm curious about it, I'm sure other people are. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I don't mind talking about that kind of stuff. It does. Like I
Yeah.
said, you're opening up a can of worms because
Right.
it comes up a lot even on social media, especially
Mm,
LinkedIn. A lot of
mm,
very opinionated people on LinkedIn, and
yeah.
yeah, so that's where we
Yeah.
see it
So
a lot.
right, right. Okay, so let's kind of dive into the legal nursing side of things. You've got this extensive background, and obviously the love of what's next, what's next. So how did you decide to go into legal nursing? How did that come about for you?
Well, somebody decided for me,
Mm, okay.
and I and without going into detail on all of this, I won't bore you with that, but I have a family member who is in the legal world who worked a lot with expert witnesses, and she had been convincing me time and time again, Amy, you should be an expert witness. You need to try this. You need to do this. You'd be great. And I kept saying, nope, nope, nope. I want nothing to do with it. I don't know what it is. It scares me. The word scares me. I
Right.
don't know what it is. Anyway, eventually I kind of gave in to her and gave her my CV with the understanding that she was going to show it to one of her attorney colleagues to get his or her um, suggestion on whether or not he or she thought I would be a good expert. And
Mhm.
anyway, long story short, I within a week got a phone call from an attorney asking me to review a case
Wow.
as an expert. And I was completely honest, and I said, "Listen, I don't know what this is about. I don't know what it entails. I don't know what to do." And he was great. He just kind of led me through it. And he said, "Well, how are you going to know unless you don't try it?" And he was right, right? Because
Yeah.
you didn't know. And
Yeah.
so I agreed to take on a case with him, um, essentially telling me what he was looking for, not the answer, of
Right.
course, but
Right.
what he needed me to do. And he even told me what he was going to pay me. I mean, I didn't do anything. And so I reviewed the case as an expert, and long story short, didn't give him the answer that he was wanting.
Oh, right.
But then he said, "Well, let's try another one." So he gave me another case.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I didn't give him an answer that he wanted again.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so he essentially never called me again. And I just through some negative feedback, really, it turned me against legal nursing. And so
Mm.
I hung it up for 3 years, and I said, I don't
Mhm.
want to do that. It's
Right.
not my cup of tea. I'm not interested. Um, and I picked it back up because it was always in the back of my mind, and I knew that maybe the expert work wasn't for me because I didn't have a good experience the first 2 times.
Right. Right.
um, but I thought, oh, maybe I'll do that behind the scenes stuff. And I only thought about that because my clinic that I was at the time, of course, COVID hit, and my clinic shut down, and I was given kind of an ultimatum, and I had to shut down to part time or get a different job.
Mm.
And so I didn't want to leave my clinic because it's a small rural clinic, and I had established it, and I cared so much about my patients and the community, and I was afraid if I stepped away from that clinic, they would shut that clinic down because I
Oh,
was the
wow.
sole provider at that clinic.
Yeah.
And it was COVID, right? And they were shutting a lot of places down. And
Yeah.
so I was decided to open up this my legal nursing folder again and try to get some behind the scenes cases.
Mhm.
solely with the intention of just keeping my clinic open
Right.
until something else happened, right?
Right.
And I started getting attorneys asking me if I would be an expert again. Like it was,
Mm.
we talked about before how your trajectory on your career, it
Yeah.
just things take you where you never thought you would go. And I just started exploding with the amount of attorneys that wanted me as a nurse practitioner expert in family medicine NP medical malpractice cases.
Mm.
And so I was like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so now I'm an expert. Um,
Mhm.
and I do some behind the scenes, but I do mostly expert work.
Mhm.
Um, and I that's where I am. So that's what
Yeah.
I do part-time, and I work in a clinic part-time. So
Right. I love it. I love that. That's amazing. I would say also based on my interviews on this podcast, I think it's been probably about half and half, maybe, that it's kind of fell in their lap and then they pursued it, or it did not fall in their lap and they just pursued it. So I always love to hear how that, like if it's a family friend who needed a case, or it was a family friend who had, an injury and was working with an attorney, and that kind of story. So
mhm.
um and I love to hear success stories, obviously, and the fact that you just listened to what was presented to you and pursued and pursued, and here you are, very well respected. That's one of
Oh,
the big
thank
reasons I reached out to you to be on this podcast is I'm an observer. I love observing. Um, in the
that's
beginning
what I
from
call a
afar.
lurker. I call
A
you a
lurker.
lurker.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. A lurker, a lurker. Absolutely. And I love and I know that you do because you speak on how to share on LinkedIn, and I love the psychology around social media and why people do the way they do, what they do, and the way that they act on social media, the lurkers.
Yep.
Um but I'm an observer with how people relate to other people and what they have to say about other people, and it's really nice when you see people cheering you on, and it's obvious when you have a lot of respect from your community, and those are the people that I'm always looking for to be on this podcast, because clearly they're doing something right and other people are noticing it, and it just shows that those people should be celebrated because they're out there, creating a part of this community that I have found um, to be not surprising, but surprising, because I haven't been doing this very long, but I didn't know what the community around legal nursing was like. And so naturally, I was an observer in the beginning to see, like, okay, what is this community like? How are people interacting with each other? And then, you see people's names and faces show up all the time. And then you watch others, speaking about those people or tagging those people or saying amazing things about those people. And it's nice to see. And I feel like I have um, a great platform to celebrate those people. And that it makes me feel good because I think everybody wins in that. So I know I've seen you very well respected in the last week as well. I haven't lurked a whole lot on your LinkedIn until recently. And then it was like, man, people are just love you. And I just love that. So my gut was right, like you are very well respected in this community, and you're doing the right things, and you're clearly
Thanks,
successful
Anna.
about that.
Thank you.
No, yeah, I mean, I speak the truth. I speak what I see. So thank you for being a light in the community. So speaking of LinkedIn, that I know that you spend time on LinkedIn, and you're a big fan of LinkedIn. Can you share a little bit about um, how you decided to kind of promote yourself on LinkedIn, and especially as an expert? It's kind of a side question too, because as an expert, clearly, what you say out there is discoverable, and there aren't a lot of people speaking out there. So I know that they can be a little hesitant in speaking on social media as an expert. Um, what is your what are your thoughts on LinkedIn as an expert? What are your thoughts on LinkedIn as something to promote? And are people doing it right? Are people doing it wrong? Just kind of I know that's like a loaded question, but anything that you can share that would help, someone listening to this that's like, I just can't figure this LinkedIn thing out. I don't get it.
Yeah, that is a loaded question,
I
Anna.
know there are many layers to that question.
There's
You
so
can
many
just
things.
pick one. You can pick
Yeah.
one and we'll run with that. That's totally fine.
Um, I think the first thing I would say, especially for, I mean, you have a lot of listeners that aren't legal nurses, but anybody who is an entrepreneur, let's say, whether you're a legal nurse or not, you have to figure out what avenue you want to take, right? There's so many vehicles that we have to help us promote not just ourselves, but our businesses and promote others in the same area, right? And
Right.
you have to just pick whatever avenue that you want to start with, because you just have to start, and you might make errors and mistakes, and that's okay. That's how you learn. And if one avenue isn't working, or you're like, I don't like that avenue, then you go to a different avenue, and then you figure out which one works for you. So I chose LinkedIn because I hate emailing. I
Yeah.
just hate it.
Hmm.
Um, Emailing is a big job in my mind. Like email marketing, I should say,
Yeah.
right? It
Uh-huh.
is a
Right.
big job.
Hmm.
And rarely can somebody do it adequately on their own without the help of a manager, if you will.
Right.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, I also don't like cold calling, and I don't like snail mail. And so to me, it was social media.
Right.
And so I just kind of went with, okay, who am I targeting? Well,
Hmm.
clearly it is, for me anyway, either attorneys, other legal nurses, or other potential medical experts
Right.
are my targets, because we can all lift each other up. We can all build off of each other.
Hmm.
And somebody else, if you make a good connection, can actually promote your business for free,
Right.
right? And
Mhm.
so I went on LinkedIn and I just started making connections with that target market, not with the idea to sell anything, right? Because
Mhm.
we don't, as entrepreneurs in legal nursing, we're selling, but we're not. We're more than we're offering value. That's what
Right.
we're doing.
Mhm.
And if the sale comes from offering value, that's even better.
Right.
If it doesn't, then what you'd have done is made a good connection where you could potentially get a referral, or
Right.
get somebody talking about you and say, hey, this legal nurse is awesome. Her work is
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
That's free advertisement for you.
Mhm.
And so I would just encourage anybody trying to figure out what avenue to take, just start something and stick with it for a little bit until you figure out if it's working for you. Don't start 10 things at once, because it
Right.
gets exhausting.
Right.
Um, if you start one thing and it works, run with it. On LinkedIn, it is all about making connections that are valuable and being visible, right? So
Mhm.
you can connect with as many people as you want, but if you never post anything on social media, on LinkedIn, you're not visible and they're not going to remember you. So you have to do it consistently, whatever works for you. I
Mhm.
try to do anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. Some weeks are
Mhm.
better than others, depending on
Right.
what I'm doing. But
Mhm.
if you can do a minimum of 3 times a week, that's great. And then what do you post?
Yeah.
anything valuable. Now you might think, well, yeah, but I don't think it's valuable. But guess what? Somebody will, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to think about like your audience that you're trying to reach out to, right? If one of my posts is like, oh, this is for legal nurses, well, then I'm not going to post something about an attorney unless it is pertinent to a legal nurse. Um, vice versa. If I'm going to make a post that's directed towards an attorney, I'm going to give them something of value, that they can use going forward.
Right.
So even if you don't think it's going to be valuable to anybody, it will be valuable to one person. And if it's valuable to one person, other people will think it's valuable. So you just have to start.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because I think that providing value makes complete sense, right? But I think that providing value, I think sometimes trips people up. I know um, I, I can speak for myself in past businesses on social, not necessarily on LinkedIn, even though they're different platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn. Uh, still this social psychology of what is valuable and what is not. And I think that we tend, and you tell me if you feel the same way, is that we tend to overthink what's valuable and what's not, right? We, like you just said, you're going to say that's not valuable. Well, what is valuable? And I know that my experience in the past with Facebook and what's valuable is you don't know until you know, right? You don't know until you
You have to
share.
experiment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and you said this in the beginning is that don't be afraid to do it, right? Don't be afraid to fail.
Right.
I think that that's part of, well, what's valuable. This may not be valuable, so I'm not going to do it because I fear failure, right? Instead, I just
Mm.
post it, see what happens. Don't be tied to it. And then if it rises, it rises. If it doesn't, there are many more posts to follow. Am I right?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
absolutely. And you know
Yeah.
what? There's always a delete button. I mean, you can
Yes.
delete
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yes, it's out there forever because
Yeah.
it's social media,
Yeah.
but you delete it if it doesn't perform well or if you don't like what it did, or, just delete it. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal. Nobody's
Right.
going to remember it in a week.
Right.
Um, I think the other thing that part of the other question that you asked is, as an expert,
Yes.
how do you juggle posting things on social media,
Mhm.
um, and not having it be held against you,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
I'm going to be honest, no matter what you do on social media, it will be held against you.
Yep.
Whether you post something about your kids or
Yeah.
you post something about what you do for a living, it will be held against you, right? Like the very first trial that I testified at, um, they took in another podcast that I was a guest on and spliced it and then put it together to make it sound like I said one thing when really I said another. And I couldn't do anything to defend myself because I was on the stand and it was yes or no questions, right? It's
Mhm.
not your job to defend yourself. It's your
Mhm.
attorney's job that you're being hired for.
Right.
So they came back and they smoothed the waters and they played the real thing.
Oh.
And it was
Yeah.
fine. But what I'm saying with that is like, so many people get afraid, especially when they are expert witnesses, that what they post on LinkedIn or wherever
Mhm.
will be held against them or ripped apart. Well, I'm telling you, it will, no matter
Mhm.
what.
Mhm.
So there's no way around it. So if
Mhm.
you are posting something about what you do and what you have to offer to people, or you're posting something on Facebook about your kids or whatever, it's going to be used. So you might
Right.
as well make it facts, right? Whatever you post on LinkedIn, you might as well make it facts, something that people can find useful and not worry about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just have to be factual.
Yeah.
Even opinions sometimes are really hard. I don't normally give medical opinions on
Right.
LinkedIn.
Right.
I give facts and I back
Right.
them up. with
Right.
things,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. Because you're right. No matter what, it's going to
Yeah.
be brought up, it's going to be brought up. And so then it also goes back to, not fearing, well, what if you're already go approaching it that it will be brought up and you can defend whatever you have to say because you're sharing facts or you're sharing your life. It is who you are. And if you accept that, right, then you bypass that fear. I'm
Yeah.
saying this out loud because I had a very similar situation, and I have a podcast,
Hmm.
and it's discoverable. It's out there, and sure enough, it's that stuff is
Yeah.
brought up. So it's just understanding that no matter what you do, and everybody has. So I had another friend tell me everybody has social media.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at anyone's social media and bring something up.
Yeah.
So once you say that, even if you're not sharing your, like you said, your kids, you're not sharing your legal nursing business, but you've shared your kids in the past, it's out there. Just like
Yeah.
we tell our kids, anything you post is out there. So I appreciate you sharing that and giving people permission to, be themselves on social media, and share the facts. And, you know,
Yeah.
you don't need to share an opinion because there are plenty of facts out there that you can share that's valuable, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And really that's what, when I help other, especially legal nurses, go through their social media, specifically on LinkedIn, because it's my absolute favorite. It is like my Facebook, honestly. I
Yeah.
rarely go on
Yeah.
Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
Um, because it is the only thing that I find beneficial to me. I learn so
Yep.
much from other people
Yep.
that's why I go on there, and I try to teach other legal nurses that if you're gonna try to use LinkedIn as your vehicle, whether you're an expert or a behind the scenes legal nurse, um, always share facts,
Yep.
right? If you
Yep.
stick to the facts and you can back
Hmm.
them up,
Hmm.
you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Share a little bit more about you working with other legal nurses out there. I know that you obviously you do. Can you share with our listeners a little bit more about that?
So, actually, you just commented on my post the other day with the nurse marketeers, and you were like,
Yes.
"Oh, tell me about this."
Because I did not know about it. And that's why I
Yeah.
want you to share about it because it was like, oh, I had no idea that you actually help legal nurses with their LinkedIn. I wanted you on the podcast because people speak so highly of you as a person, as a legal nurse. I had no idea that you actually, help other legal nurses with their, being visible and things. So I love that just happened to pop up. So yeah, share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I started doing that because out of pure frustration of myself, because, there's so many LNC education and certifications and what have you out there. My frustration going through all of this was that what I lacked in my education was marketing. How do you market yourself? Like, at the end of the day, we are nurses. And unless you have an underlying marketing degree, you are a nurse. You are not a marketer. And so nurses typically don't like to talk about ourselves in a way that markets. So our brain doesn't work that way. And it was frustrating. So I absorbed as much as I could and learned all this stuff and took some courses and on marketing, and come to find out nurses are actually the best marketers there are.
Mhm. That's
So
that's great to hear that. Yeah.
you just don't know it yet. It's like
Mhm.
you don't know what is underneath all of that thick nursing skin because you've never had to channel it.
Mhm.
But here's an example. As a nurse, when you go into a patient's room, in order for you to get that patient to do the things that you're asking or requesting, you have to build trust. And we have no problem building trust within 5 minutes as a nurse,
Mhm.
right? And suddenly those patients trust us. And then the patient will literally do almost anything we ask them to do because we have built that trust with them. And so you not only build trust, but now you are selling your services to that patient by saying, okay, now you have to take this med, or now we have to do this, we have to turn. They just do it, right? You haven't, like, you are the best salesperson in the world. You just didn't realize it. So if you can use that energy in your nursing, in that knowledge of your nursing, and channel it into your marketing, it is so fascinating how easy it comes to the nurse that, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I could do that. So I started the Nurse Marketeers because I love Disney, and the Nurse Marketeers sound like a Disney name.
I love it. Oh,
And
trust me, I love it. I'm
yeah,
a
and
huge Disney fan, so
I love
it does
Disney.
stand
And
out.
we
Yeah.
are marketers, right? We
hmm
have to,
hmm
as legal nurses, we have to be marketers.
hmm
So I try to teach them specifically about LinkedIn because it's my passion. But really, you can use any of the things that I teach on any social media and doing anything. I have some things in the work coming down the pipeline that I continue to work on as I learn more. So um, yeah, people should request to join the Nurse Marketeers
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. It's a private group. I only open it up to nurse entrepreneurs. Um, and I will every once in a while put out a bunch of invites. But yeah, so I have I do some webinars. I've done some free webinars. I have a paid course that I did a beta test on and did another one. And every time I get feedback from people, I change it and I improve it and make it what nurses want. It's not an arm and a leg because I'm not out to make money. I'm just out to reimburse my time.
hmm
Um, and it's for nurses, right? It's for us nurse entrepreneurs because we don't know how to market.
Yeah, and I can say that you've got people that have gone through your program that are your biggest fans. So
And
I
it's
have not, but I have witnessed your cheerleaders who say that, your program is a game changer for them. So um I'm glad I stumbled upon that, and it was like perfect timing for this
yeah.
conversation. So thank you for sharing that. And that information, your information will be in the show notes. So I encourage everyone who listens to this episode to reach out to you on LinkedIn, say hello, connect with you, and just see what you're doing. It's your LinkedIn is a breath of fresh air because, I think we're also used to seeing other things on LinkedIn, and it doesn't, it's not, it's very, business like, and I think that that's what turns people off. But your content is a breath of fresh air, and it's helpful and it's valuable and all of those things. So clearly you know what you're talking about. So I appreciate you sharing that, and make sure to reach out. Any last words of advice for this community? I mean, I
Oh
think
my
we
gosh,
touched on
Anna,
a
we
whole lot in this episode for sure.
right. We
Yeah.
were like all over the
We
place.
got everything covered, I think. Yeah, yeah. All the curious questions. So,
Yeah, I think my biggest advice to anybody, whether it's on the legal nurse community or any entrepreneur, is there is no room for fear. You
love
just
it.
can't be fearful.
Yeah.
Things are fearful. They are scary, right?
hmm
Especially when
hmm
we're headed into an unknown. But
hmm
there's no room for fear because it will hold you back. And the minute you hold back, you're going to miss all those opportunities that are lying out there.
Yeah.
So you just gotta, let go of all of your
Yep.
inhibitions
Yep.
and go get it.
Jump. Jump.
Jump.
2 feet. 2 feet
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you again for being on here. And I've loved this conversation so much. And
It was so
I
fun. I
look
appreciate it.
forward to continuing it out there on the social web. Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at anna.gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.